At Thanksgiving dinner, my son handed me a card. An invitation, he said, for a grand celebration. When I realized the party was a cruel trap, designed to humiliate me, I simply smiled. They thought they had won. They were wrong. Stay with me. Follow my story to the end, and tell me where you're listening from. Like and share if you've ever had to fight for what's yours. The shrill ringing of her phone jolted Clara from her evening reverie. It was Ethan, her son. His voice, usually a steady baritone, was unusually bright, almost effervescent. "Mom! You'll never guess what," he practically shouted into the receiver. "I've got huge news, and I want to celebrate. Just you and me. Dinner, tonight." Clara's heart fluttered with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Ethan had been distant, absorbed in his burgeoning career and new life, leaving her feeling like a fading photograph in the album of his memories. A genuine invitation, just for them, was a rare and precious thing. "Oh, Ethan, that sounds wonderful," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Where would you like to go?" "I've booked a table at Skyline Terrace," he announced with a flourish that was almost audible through the phone line. "Rooftop, incredible views, the works. My treat, of course." Clara's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. She knew of the place. A glass-encased eyrie perched atop one of the city's tallest buildings, famous for its exorbitant prices and breathtaking panoramas. It was a place for celebrating milestones, for making grand statements. A small part of her, the practical part honed by decades of careful budgeting, winced at the thought of the bill, but the larger part, her maternal heart, swelled with hope. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps he finally wanted to reconnect, to share his life with her again. Truly. She imagined him wanting to talk, to laugh, to simply be with her, just like old times. That hope was a fragile, cherished bloom, and she guarded it carefully. She spent the better part of an hour preparing, an unusual indulgence for a Tuesday evening. She chose her navy silk dress, a classic cut that always made her feel elegant, even if it had seen better days. She brushed her silver hair until it gleamed, then fastened her late husband's pearl necklace around her throat. The pearls were cool against her skin, a comforting weight that brought back a phantom touch, a quiet strength. They were her anchor, her connection to a love that endured, and a reminder of the sacrifices she had made. Tonight, she wanted to look her best, not just for Ethan, but for the rekindling of their bond she so desperately yearned for. The taxi deposited her at the base of the gleaming skyscraper, and a swift elevator whisked her upwards, her ears popping slightly with the ascent. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world of hushed opulence. The restaurant was indeed lavish, a symphony of polished chrome, soft lighting, and discreet murmurs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular, glittering canvas of the city sprawling beneath them, its lights like scattered diamonds. Ethan was already at their table, a prime spot right by the window. He rose as she approached, a wide, almost theatrical smile stretching across his face. "Mom! You look absolutely radiant," he exclaimed, kissing her cheek. The compliment felt a little forced, a little too loud in the quiet elegance of the room. "Thank you for coming. I told you. Big news. I got the promotion. Regional manager. And I wanted to celebrate with the most important woman in my life." Clara's chest tightened with pride and a familiar pang of bittersweet memory. The most important woman. It hadn't always felt that way, not since his father had passed away so suddenly, leaving her a young widow with a bewildered little boy. She remembered the blur of grief and endless days, juggling two demanding jobs. A cashier at the grocery store by day, a bookkeeper for a small local business by night, just to keep a roof over their heads and ensure Ethan never wanted for anything. She had poured every ounce of her strength and love into raising him, sacrificing her own dreams for his future. To hear him say those words now, after all these years, felt like a validation, a repayment for every sleepless night. A waiter appeared, gliding silently to their table. Ethan, with a confident wave of his hand, pointed to a bottle on the wine list. "We'll have the 2015 Bordeaux, please," he instructed. "The Chateau Lafite." Clara's eyes inadvertently drifted to the price listed beside it. $250. Her breath hitched. Her practical mind screamed at the extravagance. A whole week's grocery budget. Gone in a single sip. She felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Ethan caught her almost imperceptible wince. He laughed, a little too loudly again. "Mom, relax. I can afford this now. This is a celebration, remember?" No holding back. When the wine was poured, its deep ruby liquid gleaming in the candlelight, Ethan raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he declared, his eyes bright, though a strange, restless energy seemed to hum beneath his cheerful facade. "And to family." Clara clinked her glass against his, the crystal chiming softly. "To new beginnings," she echoed. "And to family." The words felt hollow, even as she said them. She couldn't shake the sense that something was off, a discordant note in the otherwise perfect symphony of the evening. Ethan seemed less like himself, and more like an actor playing a part. Throughout the initial courses, her unease grew. Ethan, usually so animated when excited, kept glancing at his watch. A subtle but repetitive gesture that spoke volumes. His eyes, though they tried to hold hers, frequently darted around the room, scanning the other tables as if searching for someone, or something. He picked at his appetizer, a delicate arrangement of scallops, barely taking a bite. He praised the food, the ambiance, the wine, but his enthusiasm felt thin, stretched. It was as if he was performing, rather than genuinely enjoying the moment. "Excuse me for a moment, Mom," he said suddenly, pushing back his chair with a slight scrape against the polished floor. "I just need to use the restroom." He left his barely touched plate of scallops, still glistening under the soft lights, and walked away, not meeting her gaze. Clara watched him go, a shiver running down her spine despite the warm glow of the restaurant. She was left alone at the table, surrounded by the clinking of silverware and hushed conversations, a growing sense of dread settling upon her. She tried to dismiss it, to tell herself she was being foolish, overly sensitive, but the feeling persisted, a subtle, cold tendril coiling in her gut. She couldn't pinpoint exactly why, but she knew, with an instinct honed by years of motherhood, that something was wrong, terribly wrong. Clara sat alone, the glittering cityscape mocking her growing anxiety. The quiet hum of conversation around her seemed to amplify the silence at her own table. She traced the rim of her untouched wine glass, the cold crystal, a stark contrast to the burning suspicion in her heart. Just as a wave of self-doubt threatened to wash over her. "Perhaps I'm just being paranoid, a lonely old woman reading too much into things." A shadow fell over her table. A man in a crisp security uniform, his name tag reading George, approached with a discreet nod. His face was kind, lined with years, and his eyes held a knowing solemnity. He leaned in conspiratorially, his voice a low, almost inaudible murmur meant only for her ears. "Excuse me, ma'am," he began, his gaze briefly sweeping the surrounding tables before returning to hers. "Everything all right here?" Clara, startled but trying to maintain composure, managed a weak smile. "Yes, thank you. Just waiting for my son to return." George's expression remained neutral, yet his eyes held a flicker of urgency. He straightened slightly, then leaned back in, his voice dropping another notch. "Ma'am," he whispered, his words cutting through the restaurant's ambient noise like a sharpened blade. "I saw your son. When you were looking out at the view just now. He put something in your drink." Clara's world tilted. The glittering city outside the window seemed to spin. Her breath hitched, catching painfully in her throat. She stared at George, her mind struggling to process the impossible, monstrous accusation. "What? What did you say?" Her voice was barely a croak. George, calm and unflustered, clarified, his eyes unwavering. "A small white tablet. Very small. It dissolved quickly, but I saw it. I've been doing this for 15 years, ma'am. I know what I saw." The blood drained from Clara's face, leaving her skin ashen, cold. The hopeful warmth that had filled her earlier, the tender anticipation of reconnecting with her son, shattered into a million icy fragments. Betrayal. The words screamed in her mind, a raw, visceral shock. She instinctively snatched her hand away from her wine glass, as if it were a venomous snake, leaving a faint condensation ring on the pristine tablecloth. Her son. Her Ethan. How could he? Why? George, sensing her profound distress, continued in the same hushed, urgent tone. He'll be back any moment. You should consider switching your glass with his when he returns. It's the only way, ma'am. His words were practical, devoid of judgment, offering a lifeline in a sea of sudden terror. Clara's mind raced, a chilling clarity descending upon her. The casual questions about her will last week, the way Ethan had lingered by her desk, feigning interest in old photographs. But her eyes had caught him glancing at the folder containing her final wishes. She had dismissed it then, as a fleeting oddity, a son's curiosity. Now, it replayed in her memory like a scene from a horror film, suddenly imbued with sinister meaning. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying precision. This dinner, the expensive wine, the celebration, it was all a charade. A setup. Her throat constricted, but she managed to whisper, her voice trembling with a potent mix of terror and gratitude. Thank you. Oh, George, thank you. She looked up at him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. He gave her a small, sympathetic nod, then quietly moved away, melting back into the background of the elegant restaurant, leaving Clara alone with her monstrous realization. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her phone in her purse. With trembling fingers, she navigated to her contacts and quickly typed a message to her sister, Brenda, her closest confidant. Call me in 10 minutes. Emergency. Don't ask questions, just call. She pressed send, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She needed a witness. An ally. Even if only on the other end of the line. Just as she slipped her phone back into her purse, Ethan reappeared, his face now completely devoid of the earlier nervousness. A smug, almost triumphant air hung about him. He moved with a relaxed gait, a confident smile playing on his lips. Sorry about that, Mom. Where were we? He asked, sliding back into his seat, his gaze sweeping over her with an unsettling mixture of affection and something colder, more calculating. He seemed utterly convinced of his success. He reached for his glass, then paused, noticing Clara's untouched wine. You haven't even taken a sip, Mom. Come on, let's toast. To the future, he declared, raising his own glass, its pristine rim gleaming. This was it. The moment of truth. Clara's breath caught. With a surge of adrenaline, fueled by a primal instinct for survival, she acted. As Ethan's attention momentarily flickered to the waiter approaching their table, Clara, with a swift, almost imperceptible movement, reached across the table, her hand, steady despite her inner turmoil, swapped the 2 wine glasses. It was a fluid motion, practiced in her mind 100 times in the last minute. Her poisoned glass was now in front of Ethan, his clean one, in front of her. To the future, she echoed, her voice surprisingly steady, even as a cold dread gripped her. She forced a smile, a mask over the abyss of her emotions. They clinked glasses, the sound ringing hollow in Clara's ears. Ethan, oblivious, took a large, confident gulp, draining nearly half the glass in one swallow. Clara, heart-hammering, brought the glass to her lips, taking only the tiniest sip, her eyes never leaving her son's face. Within what felt like an eternity, but was likely only a few minutes, the change began. Ethan's bright eyes started to cloud, a heavy languor settling over them. The confident smile faltered, replaced by a confused frown. His head lolled slightly, and his words, when he spoke, came out thick and slurred. Mom, I think, I'm not feeling so good, he mumbled, his hand reaching out, unsteady, to clutch at the table. His eyelids fluttered, growing heavy, fighting a losing battle against an encroaching darkness. Clara watched him, her heart aching with a pain so profound it was physical, yet a terrible, chilling realization solidified within her. The horror was not just that her son had intended to poison her, but that by her own swift action, she had turned the weapon back on its wielder. She was no longer the intended prey. She had survived. But at what unimaginable cost? The restaurant staff, ever discreet, had efficiently helped Clara navigate the embarrassing situation of her suddenly incapacitated son. Ethan, now heavy-lidded and listing, insisted he was perfectly fine, even as his knees buckled and his words slurred into an incoherent mumble. "Juice a little woozy," he'd protested, clutching Clara's arm with surprising strength, yet struggling to find his balance. Clara, with the help of a kind waiter and a quick word to the manager about a sudden dizzy spell, managed to get him into a waiting taxi. Her pearl necklace felt like a noose, her elegant dress suddenly a costume of deceit. The ride home was excruciating. Ethan slumped against her, his head heavy on her shoulder, his breath warm and moist against her ear. He began to mumble, fragments of thoughts escaping his drugged mind like whispers from a nightmare. "The papers. Gotta get to the papers. Before she changes her mind," he slurred, his voice thick with sleep and something far more sinister. "It'll be easy. Just a few signatures. She'll never know." Clara's grip on the taxi's steering wheel tightened until her knuckles were white. A wave of nausea washed over her, far worse than anything the expensive wine could have induced. The sheer magnitude of his betrayal, the cold, calculating premeditation, was like a physical blow. Her son, her only child, the boy she had sacrificed everything for, was plotting to steal from her, to erase her will, perhaps even her very existence, all while feigning affection. The weight of his head on her shoulder now felt like an unbearable burden, a testament to the depth of his deception. When they finally arrived at Ethan's apartment building, the familiar brick facade seemed to mock her. The illusion of his success, his thriving life, was rapidly crumbling. Just as she was fumbling with his keys, trying to prop his swaying form against the door, Mrs. Davis, a kind, elderly neighbor, emerged from her apartment. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of Ethan, leaning heavily on Clara, his expensive suit rumpled, his tie askew. "Is everything all right, dear?" Mrs. Davis asked, her voice laced with concern. Clara forced a smile, a brittle, strained thing that felt like it would shatter at any moment. "Oh, yes, Mrs. Davis. Just a bit too much wine tonight, I'm afraid." Ethan was celebrating a big promotion. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth, but it was necessary. The truth was too grotesque, too unspeakable. Mrs. Davis nodded sympathetically. "Ah, the exuberance of youth. Well, you get him settled, dear. Good night." With a final, strained effort, Clara managed to get Ethan inside his apartment. The moment she stepped in, the illusion of his polished, successful life completely dissolved. The place was a disaster. Stacks of unread mail lay scattered on a coffee table riddled with coffee rings. Empty takeout containers were piled high in the kitchen sink, a stale odor hanging in the air. Clothes lay draped over chairs, and dust motes danced in the slivers of light escaping through the half-drawn blinds. This was not the apartment of a man who had just landed a major promotion. It was the dwelling of someone struggling, perhaps even drowning. The big news and the lavish dinner were nothing but a smokescreen for something far more desperate. She guided Ethan to his bedroom, the short walk feeling like a marathon. He stumbled, tripped, and finally collapsed onto his unmade bed, falling into a deep, guttural snore almost immediately. The drug had done its work, precisely as intended, just on the wrong target. Clara stood over him, watching his unconscious form. Her heart felt like a hollowed-out cavern, filled only with the bitter wind of betrayal. The image of the bright-eyed little boy, the one she had nurtured and loved with every fiber of her being, flickered in her mind, only to be replaced by the stranger now sprawled before her. The tears that had been threatening finally came, silent and scalding, tracing paths down her cheeks. But with the grief came a steely resolve. The time for sorrow would come later. Right now, she needed answers. She needed to understand the full extent of his treachery. Her eyes landed on his laptop, sitting innocently on his desk, its screen glowing faintly. It was open, unlocked. With a trembling hand, she approached it. Her fingers hovered over the touchpad. A moment of hesitation. Was she truly ready for what she might find? Could she bear to see the depths of her son's depravity laid bare? She took a deep, shuddering breath and touched the pad. She opened the browser, her gaze immediately drawn to the search history. Her blood ran cold. The screen glowed with a chilling narrative of his premeditation. The search terms were stark, brutal, and horrifyingly clear. How long does Ambien take to work? Mixing sleep medication with alcohol effects. Legal consequences of document forgery. How to change inheritance documents without beneficiary knowledge. Elderly parent signs away assets. Power of attorney fraud detection. Each search term was a hammer blow, shattering any lingering doubts she might have harbored. This wasn't an impulsive act born of desperation, not a sudden lapse in judgment. This was planned, methodical, calculated. He had researched it, meticulously charting a course to strip her of everything she owned, perhaps even to silence her permanently. The dinner, the elaborate act of affection, the poisoned wine, it was all part of a meticulously crafted scheme. Clara sank into the desk chair, her legs no longer able to support her. The cold reality of her son's intentions settled over her like a shroud. He hadn't just intended to steal from her, he had intended to incapacitate her, to render her helpless, to exploit her trust and love for his own selfish gain. The innocent boy was gone, replaced by a stranger capable of monstrous deceit. Her heart was broken, but her mind was now sharpened, focused, and utterly resolute. She knew what she had to do. The glowing screen of Ethan's laptop became a window into the darkest corners of his mind. Clara, her hands still trembling, continued to scroll through his browser history, each entry a fresh stab to her already shattered heart. Beyond the initial searches for sedatives and their effects, she found repeated visits to various legal forums. He hadn't just been casually researching, he had been building a case, meticulously and cold-bloodedly. Under a series of innocuous-sounding fake usernames, Ethan had posted hypothetical questions. The words blurred on the screen, yet their meaning was devastatingly clear. What happens if someone dies shortly after changing their will? One post inquired. Another asked, can family members contest a will if they suspect forgery, especially if the beneficiary is suddenly altered? A particularly chilling query read, how to prove someone was mentally incompetent when they signed legal documents, perhaps influenced by a new financial advisor or sudden charitable leanings. Clara felt a profound sickness rise within her. Her recently updated will. Just last month, she had made changes, reflecting her growing desire to leave a portion of her modest estate to a local women's shelter, a cause close to her heart, while still ensuring Ethan was well provided for. He knew. He had somehow found out. And this was his twisted response. He wasn't just planning to steal her assets. He was planning to discredit her, to portray her as senile and easily manipulated. Even after her death, driven by a desperate need to uncover the full extent of his depravity, Clara clicked on his email drafts. There, unsent messages painted an even more elaborate picture of his deceit. Emails addressed to various law firms, carefully worded, detailing fabricated concerns about her supposed confusion and erratic financial decisions. He was attempting to lay the groundwork, to construct a false narrative that would challenge her new will, ensuring he inherited everything, just as in the old one. He wanted to wipe away her final wishes, her legacy of generosity, for his own selfish gain. Her gaze then fell upon a small, metal filing cabinet next to his desk, surprisingly unlocked. With a sense of grim determination, Clara pulled open the top drawer. Inside, neatly organized, were a few folders. One, conspicuously thick, was labeled Clara, Will, and Assets. Her stomach churned. Within this folder, she found not only copies of her old will, the one that indeed left everything solely to him, but also a meticulously organized subfolder titled Financial Planning. This wasn't planning for his future, but for hers, or rather, for the quick liquidation of what was hers. Inside, Clara discovered detailed printouts of her bank statements, her modest retirement accounts, and even her life insurance policy. There were calculations scribbled in the margins, estimates of her house value, and alarming notes on how to facilitate a quick sale and transfer funds without raising red flags. He had not only known the details of her finances, but he had systematically cataloged them, preparing for an imminent takeover. Just as she was reeling from this discovery, a piece of paper slipped from between the documents. It was a printed email exchange. The subject line read, "It's all set." Her heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. The sender was Ethan. The recipient was Chloe, his girlfriend. Clara's eyes scanned the message, and a cold dread seized her, far more potent than anything she had felt before. Ethan had written, "Hey babe, good news. I'm taking the old lady out to dinner tonight at Skyline Terrace. Once she's out of the picture, we can finally start our real life together. The house, the money, it's all ours. It'll be easy. A few pills in her wine, and while she's sleeping, I'll take care of the paperwork." The words, so casually written, so utterly devoid of empathy, seemed to claw at Clara's soul. Out of the picture. The phrase resonated in her mind, a terrifying echo. He hadn't just intended to drug her and steal her inheritance. Given her known, albeit managed, heart condition, and the potency of mixing sedatives with alcohol, the phrase "out of the picture" took on a horrifying, potentially lethal meaning. Had he truly intended to kill her? To ensure she wouldn't wake up? Wouldn't contest? Wouldn't know? The thought was a sickening, icy realization that made her physically recoil. This wasn't just about money. It was about extinguishing a life for financial gain, with the chilling complicity of his girlfriend. At that precise moment, her phone buzzed, startling her out of her horrified trance. It was a text from Brenda, her sister. "Everything okay? You texted me earlier? Said emergency?" Clara stared at the screen, her mind racing. Should she tell Brenda? Should she call the police? A part of her screamed for justice, for exposure, but another, deeper part, the mother in her, despite everything, recoiled from the idea of ruining her son's life completely, even as he had tried to ruin hers. No, not yet, not without a plan. With a heavy heart and a newfound resolve, Clara typed a reply, forcing a casual tone. "Everything's fine, Brenda." False alarm. Just a little misunderstanding. She pressed send, a fresh wave of tears blurring her vision. But even as she lied, her resolve hardened. She wasn't calling for help yet. She wasn't exposing him. Instead, she quietly began the meticulous process of documenting everything she had found. She took photos of the browser history, the email drafts, the financial documents, and most damningly, the printed email exchange with Chloe. Every screenshot, every carefully placed piece of paper, was a silent testament to his betrayal, a weapon she would wield when the time was right. The game had changed, and Clara, the quiet, loving mother, was now a woman forged in the crucible of betrayal, ready to fight. The story is far from over, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. If you're gripped by Clara's journey, please remember to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more tales of resilience and unexpected turns. Your support means the world to me. Clara closed Ethan's laptop, the incriminating evidence now safely documented on her phone. She stood in the quiet chaos of his apartment, the sleeping form of her son on the bed a stark contrast to the calculating villain revealed on the screen. The initial shock had given way to a cold, burning clarity. She had options. She knew. She could wake him, confront him with the evidence, unleash her fury. She could call the police, have him arrested, expose his monstrous plot, or she could pretend nothing had happened, live with the knowledge, and forever be wary. She dismissed each option as quickly as it arose. Confrontation would lead to denials, to gaslighting, to a messy, painful fight that she wasn't ready to have, not without a strategy. Calling the police, while morally justifiable, would shatter his life. And a part of her, the wounded mother, still flinched from that ultimate act of destruction. Pretending nothing happened was simply impossible. The betrayal was too deep, too life-threatening. No, there had to be a fourth way, a way that allowed her to protect herself, to exact a measure of justice, and perhaps, to truly understand the depth of his fall. A chilling resolve settled over her, firm and unyielding. If Ethan wanted to play games with my future, she whispered to the silent apartment, her voice laced with a newfound steel. Then it was time I learned to play games, too. She would not be a victim. She would be a player, and she would win. She moved silently, gathering her purse and keys, making sure not to disturb the drugged sleep of her son. The morning light was just beginning to filter through the grimy windows as she slipped out of his apartment. A renewed sense of purpose, replacing the despair. She felt lighter, empowered, no longer a heartbroken mother, but a woman with a mission. Her phone rang at precisely 11:30 a.m. It was Ethan. His voice, though still a little rough around the edges, was back to its charming, earnest cadence. "Mom, are you okay?" I woke up with the worst headache. I barely remember anything from last night after the appetizers. Did I say anything strange? Was I difficult? He feigned concern with an expert touch, fishing for any sign that his plan had gone awry. Clara took a deep breath, slipping into the role she knew she had to play. Her voice was light, gentle, perfectly pitched to that of an unsuspecting, loving mother. "Oh, Ethan, sweetheart. You just had a little too much of that expensive wine. You were pretty quiet on the drive home. Just dozed right off. I tucked you into bed. You just needed a good sleep." She injected a hint of amused exasperation, making him believe she was utterly oblivious, completely fooled by his act. A palpable wave of relief came through the phone line. "Oh, thank goodness. I was so worried. I just had the best news to share, and I hated that I wasn't coherent enough to tell you properly." Clara played along. "Well, you're coherent now. What's this big news then?" "Actually," he paused, a calculated beat of anticipation. "I was hoping I could come over this afternoon. We could talk properly. I'd love to tell you all about it." The news, she knew, was the non-existent promotion, a convenient excuse to get her alone, to continue his scheme. "Of course, darling," Clara replied, her voice warm. "Come anytime. I'll put the kettle on." She hung up, her heart a tangled mess of rage and sorrow, but her resolve was unwavering. The game had begun. The hours before Ethan's arrival were a flurry of quiet, deliberate action. Clara's first priority was to secure her home. She went straight to her home office, the place Ethan had undoubtedly intended to raid while she was incapacitated. With careful hands, she gathered all her important legal documents: her will, her property deeds, her financial statements, and insurance policies. She didn't leave a single paper that could be misused. All of it went into the small, fireproof safe hidden discreetly in her bedroom closet, a place she knew Ethan was unaware of. Next, she prepared for their conversation. She found her old smartphone, rarely used, and set it up to record audio. She placed it carefully beneath a decorative tissue box on her living room coffee table, ensuring it was out of sight, but perfectly positioned to capture every word. She would need proof, undeniable evidence, for whatever came next. The doorbell chimed precisely at 3 p.m. Clara opened the door to find Ethan standing there, looking remarkably well, freshly showered and dressed, his charm radiating. He held a small bouquet of her favorite white lilies. "For the most understanding mother in the world," he said, handing them to her with that same practiced, dazzling smile. His eyes, however, subtly darted towards the direction of her home office. A fleeting, almost imperceptible glance that Clara did not miss. He was checking, confirming her vulnerability. She accepted the flowers, her smile unwavering. "How lovely. Thank you, darling. Come in, come in." They settled into the living room, the hidden recorder silently whirring. Ethan launched into his tale, his voice full of feigned excitement. "So, Mom, about this promotion. It's even bigger than I initially thought. It's not just a regional manager position. It's an opportunity to lead a whole new division, a marketing venture with huge potential." He painted a grandiose picture of innovation, market disruption, and future millions, a dazzling but utterly flimsy facade. Then came the pivot. "The thing is, Mom, to truly capitalize on this, to get it off the ground, I need a bit of seed money. A substantial investment. Really. We're talking about $50,000. He paused, letting the number hang in the air, then continued, his voice softening, becoming earnest. I know it's a lot, but this isn't just for me. It's an investment in our future, in my success. I thought, you know, a chance for you to see your generosity bloom, to be a part of my groundbreaking success while you're still here to enjoy it. The carefully chosen words, designed to appeal to her maternal pride and generosity, twisted Clara's gut. He wasn't just asking for money, he was asking for her complicity in his own deception, framing it as a chance for her to witness her investment, her generosity, before she was out of the picture. Clara listened to Ethan's elaborate narrative, her gaze unwavering, a silent battle raging behind her composed expression. The recorder, hidden beneath the tissue box, captured every carefully crafted lie. She let him finish, the silence in the room stretching, heavy with unspoken truths. When he was done, Clara leaned forward slightly, her voice calm, devoid of the emotion churning within her. Ethan, she began, her tone soft yet penetrating. Are you in some kind of financial trouble? The question, so direct and unexpected, hit him like a physical blow. His usually confident face went instantly pale, the blood draining from his cheeks. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of raw panic crossed his features. He stammered, attempting to regain his composure, to rebuild the shattered facade. Trouble? No, Mom, not trouble, just opportunity. This new venture, it's a game changer. It just needs capital, that's all. He tried to smile, but it was a weak, uncertain grimace. Clara held his gaze, her eyes unwavering. She could see the struggle in him, the desperate scramble to maintain the illusion. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of his unraveling, he slumped back against the sofa cushions. The bravado evaporated, replaced by a sullen, defeated slump. Okay, Mom, he mumbled, avoiding her eyes, staring at his hands. Maybe I've had some financial difficulty. Some investment mistakes. Things haven't gone quite as planned with my last few ventures. He paused, then looked up, his expression a carefully constructed blend of regret and self-pity. I'm in a bit of debt. Nothing major. Maybe $40,000. Clara's heart clenched, but she maintained her poker face. 40,000. Another lie. She had seen the meticulously detailed documents in his apartment, the ones listing his total outstanding debt at a staggering $73,000, excluding his credit card balances. This marketing venture was nothing more than a desperate attempt to extract money from her, a last-ditch effort at a legitimate solution before resorting to the insidious plan she had uncovered last night. He was testing her, seeing if he could get what he wanted without having to stoop to poisoning her. The thought sent a fresh wave of disgust through her. $50,000 is a very significant amount of money, Ethan, Clara said, her voice even, thoughtful. And an investment in a new venture, especially when you're already in debt, requires careful consideration. I need some time to think about this. A flash of urgency, almost panic, sparked in Ethan's eyes. His composure began to fray at the edges. Mom, I don't have a week. This opportunity, it expires on Friday. It's a limited time offer. If I don't get the funds by then, it's gone. I lose everything. His voice rose, desperation creeping in. Clara met his frantic gaze with a steady, almost serene look. Then, she said, her voice remaining calm and measured. Perhaps it's not the right opportunity for you, darling. That was it. The final thread of his carefully constructed facade snapped. His eyes narrowed, and the charming smile vanished, replaced by a raw, ugly resentment that she had seen only rarely, in moments of extreme frustration. You really don't get it, do you? He spat, his voice low and bitter, suddenly laced with a venom she barely recognized. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up, with a mother who was never around, always working, always too busy? I barely saw you. And now, you're going to give my inheritance, my money, to strangers instead of your own son? After everything I've been through? His words were a torrent of accusations, twisting the truth, painting her as the villain, the neglectful parent, the boy she had worked 2 jobs for, the son she had loved above all else, was now rewriting their history to fit his narrative of victimhood and entitlement. Clara felt a sharp pain, not from his words, but from the raw wound of his ingratitude. She had sacrificed so much for him, had always put him first. To hear him twist her devotion into neglect was a betrayal almost as deep as his earlier plot. Yet, she kept her voice steady, refusing to rise to his bait. "Ethan, I worked hard to give you everything you needed, and I have always provided for you. My will ensures you are well taken care of, but it also reflects my desire to help others." He scoffed, pushing himself up from the sofa, beginning to pace restlessly. "Help others? What about helping your own family? Your only family?" He stopped, turning to face her, his eyes blazing with a chilling mix of anger and something else, something that bordered on a veiled threat. "I hope you'll remember that, Mom. I'm your only family. When you're older and need someone to take care of you, when you need help, those charity organizations won't be there. But I will be. Remember that." The implied threat hung in the air, cold and heavy. He was promising to be there, not out of love, but out of obligation, a twisted form of leverage. He was saying, "You'll need me someday, and I'll be there to collect." Clara looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, she saw a stranger. The son she had known and loved was gone, replaced by this bitter, grasping man. The thought of him taking care of her in her old age, after discovering his true intentions, sent a shiver of revulsion down her spine. Abandonment, she realized, would be a gift compared to his care. The game was no longer just about protecting her assets, it was about reclaiming her peace, her dignity, and her future from the shadow of his greed. The moment Ethan stormed out, leaving behind a chilling silence and the lingering scent of his resentment, Clara sprang into action. The recording device was safely switched off, its damning contents secured. The tears, which had been a constant threat, were now held at bay by a surge of furious determination. She had played the game his way, and now she would play it hers. There would be no hesitation, no second-guessing. Her first call was to Eleanor Vance, her attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had handled her late husband's estate and her own updated will. Eleanor was known for her discretion and her formidable legal mind. Her second call was to Mr. Sterling, her longtime financial advisor, a man whose calm demeanor and astute advice had guided her through decades of financial stability. Within hours, Clara had secured appointments with both for the very next morning. The next day, sitting in Eleanor Vance's elegantly appointed office, Clara laid out the evidence. She presented her phone, showing the meticulous screenshots of Ethan's browser history, the email drafts to lawyers, the detailed financial calculations, and the chilling exchange with Chloe. As Eleanor scrolled through the photos, her usually composed face tightened, a grim expression replacing her professional calm. "Clara," Eleanor said, her voice low and serious, "this is not just about financial misconduct, this is criminal behavior. Given your heart condition, and his specific searches regarding sedatives and alcohol, this could have been attempted murder. You could have died. Clara." The words, spoken plainly by a legal professional, sent a fresh wave of horror through Clara, even though she had already processed the possibility. Eleanor's confirmation solidified the monstrous reality of her son's intent. Clara took a shaky breath. "I understand, Eleanor. But for now, I don't want to press criminal charges. Not yet. I just want to protect myself, and what's mine. Financially. I want to make sure he can never do this again, or succeed if he tries." Her resolve was clear. A private resolution, for now, focused on impenetrable financial protection. Eleanor nodded, her gaze softening slightly in understanding. "Very well. We will build a fortress. A legal fortress." She began to outline a comprehensive, ironclad plan. "First, we restructure your entire estate. We remove Ethan as a beneficiary from your life insurance policy immediately. Then, we create a revocable trust." Clara listened intently as Eleanor explained the intricacies of the trust. It would hold the majority of her assets, including her house and retirement accounts. Any inheritance for Ethan would be conditional, not an automatic right. We can stipulate strict conditions, Eleanor explained. Employment verification, regular drug testing, mandatory financial counseling. Any deviation, any attempt to harm or defraud you, and he forfeits everything. It was a lifeline, but one he would have to work for. One that was designed to prevent him from ever preying on her again. Eleanor then addressed the larger threat. And we need a safety net, Clara, just in case. She proposed a sealed letter, drafted and held by Eleanor herself, detailing everything Clara had discovered. If anything happens to you, Clara, if you die unexpectedly or become incapacitated, this letter will be opened. It will contain all the evidence, and it will ensure that authorities are immediately alerted to the circumstances surrounding your demise or your inability to manage your affairs. It will prevent him from succeeding in any future attempt to get you out of the picture. The mention of the phrase, now loaded with sinister meaning, sent a chill through Clara. This was grim, but necessary. Clara, bolstered by Eleanor's strategic mind, made a crucial decision. I want my life insurance beneficiary changed, she stated firmly. Not to Ethan, not to any family. I want it to go to a charity for victims of elder financial abuse. It was a powerful statement, a reclaiming of her legacy, a subtle act of defiance that would echo long after she was gone. Her house, her sanctuary, and her meticulously saved retirement accounts, the fruits of her 2 jobs and countless sacrifices, were placed into the trust. The terms were clear. Ethan would receive a modest stipend of $500 per month from the trust, but only if he met the stringent conditions. Any violation, any attempt to manipulate or defraud, and the stipend would cease, his claims to the estate nullified. It was not a punishment, but a guardrail, a chance for him to prove himself worthy, to truly change. Later that same day, Clara met with Mr. Sterling, her financial advisor. He listened patiently as she recounted the abridged version of events, focusing on the discovery of Ethan's significant debt and his attempts to gain access to her finances. Mr. Sterling, a man who had seen much in his decades of advising, merely nodded with a somber understanding. I need to update all my financial accounts, Clara told him, her voice resolute. Remove any potential access Ethan might have had, establish new security protocols, and move any liquid assets into new, more secure accounts. I want everything locked down. Mr. Sterling calmly processed her requests, his movements efficient. As he finalized the changes, he looked at Clara with a respectful gaze. Clara, you are making very wise decisions. Unfortunately, elder financial abuse is alarmingly common, and it is a painful truth that family members are often the perpetrators. Your foresight and courage in addressing this are commendable. His words, though painful, affirmed her actions, giving her a quiet strength. She was not alone. She was not foolish. She was a survivor. The days that followed Ethan's visit were a tense waiting game. Clara knew the deadline for his fabricated marketing venture was Friday, and with it, his hopes of a legitimate bailout. She prepared herself for the inevitable call, her resolve hardening with each passing hour. She had moved beyond anger and hurt. Now, there was only a steely determination to protect herself and to draw a firm line that Ethan had so dangerously crossed. The call came precisely at 6:30 p.m. on Friday evening. Ethan's voice, when she answered, was carefully modulated, stripped of its earlier resentment, replaced with a practiced humility. "Mom," he began, "I'm calling to apologize for being so emotional the other day. I was out of line. It's just, I'm really passionate about this, and I really need your help with that 50,000. Clara took a deep breath, her heart aching for the boy he once was, but her mind firmly fixed on the man he had become. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady and calm, "I've given it a lot of thought, and I've decided I can't provide the $50,000 you need." The words hung in the air, a definitive boundary, a moment of stunned silence from the other end. Then, his controlled facade began to crack. "Can't or won't, Mom," he snapped, the resentment creeping back into his tone. "Don't tell me you can't. You have over $400,000 in assets. $50,000 is nothing to you, but it's everything to me. It's my last chance." His voice escalated, desperation warring with a simmering fury. "I've made my decision, Ethan," Clara reiterated, her voice unwavering. "I hope you can find another way to handle your situation." "What if I can't?" he snarled, the mask completely off now. "What if this ruins my life?" "What then, Mom? Will you just watch me crash and burn?" His voice had a dangerous edge, reminiscent of the implied threats from his previous visit. Clara closed her eyes for a brief moment, picturing the evidence on her phone, the depth of his calculated betrayal. When she spoke again, her voice was devoid of emotion, a stark reflection of the distance he had created between them. "Then you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices, Ethan. Just like everyone else." She heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end, then a click. He had hung up. Clara didn't hesitate. She immediately double-checked all the locks on her doors and windows, activated her alarm system, and then sent a text to Brenda. "Call me tomorrow morning by 9 a.m. If you don't hear from me, contact the police immediately. Tell them everything." It was a precautionary measure, a final layer of protection against a son who had proven himself capable of anything. The night passed without incident. Clara barely slept, but the quiet hours brought a strange sense of peace. She had drawn her line. She had protected herself. Over the next 6 weeks, Ethan attempted various forms of manipulation. There were frantic emails, alternating between pleas for forgiveness and subtle guilt trips. There were unexpected, desperate visits to her home, where he would leave flowers on her doorstep or slide handwritten notes under her door. He even tried to involve other family members, spinning tales of his mother's sudden stinginess and heartlessness. But Clara remained steadfast. A rock against his relentless waves of deceit, she ignored his calls, returned his mail, and meticulously documented every single attempt at contact, adding it to her growing file of evidence. Then, 6 weeks after their last conversation, the breakthrough came. Her phone rang, and this time, it wasn't the confident, manipulative Ethan she had grown to dread. His voice was ragged, broken, utterly devoid of pretense. He was crying. "Mom, I lost my apartment. They foreclosed. Chloe left me. I have nothing. I'm drowning, Mom. I don't know what to do." Clara's heart, though scarred, still held a flicker of maternal love. This wasn't the act of desperation. This was genuine despair. "Where are you, Ethan?" she asked, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. I'm staying with a friend," he choked out. "Mom, I don't want money. I want to talk. I need help. I need to talk to someone, a counselor or something. I don't know how I got to this point, how I ended up doing what I did." A fragile tendril of hope unfurled in Clara's chest. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, hoping for, praying for. This was genuine remorse, not just the fear of consequences. "I will pay for your counseling, Ethan," Clara said, her voice firm yet laced with the love that still endured. "Any counselor you choose. I will support you in finding your way back, but you need to understand something, Ethan. I love you. I always have. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. It means holding you accountable, even when it's hard." The phone line was silent for a long moment, broken only by Ethan's ragged breathing. Then, softly, he confessed. "Mom, the debt. It wasn't 40,000. It was 73,000. And the promotion. It was a lie. All of it. I was so desperate." His voice cracked, raw with shame. "And at the restaurant. I could have seriously hurt you with that pill, couldn't I? I didn't think. I just thought about the papers, about saving myself." Clara's voice, though quiet, was resolute. "Yes, Ethan," she confirmed. "You could have. You very well could have killed me." The truth, unvarnished and brutal, finally hung between them. It was a painful admission, a horrifying confession, but it was also the first real step towards healing. 2 years can transform a lifetime. For Clara, they had been a rebirth. She now lived in a bright, airy apartment, overlooking the bustling harbor, the salty tang of the sea air a constant reminder of her newfound freedom. She had sold the old house, the one filled with so many memories, both sweet and bitter. The proceeds had been carefully managed, allowing her to purchase her charming new home and fund a comfortable, independent life that was entirely her own, unburdened by the shadows of the past. Her relationship with Ethan was still a work in progress, a delicate tapestry woven with threads of cautious hope and enduring pain. They maintained monthly conversations, carefully constructed, honest, and often raw. He was consistently attending therapy, a commitment he had maintained without fail. He lived modestly, working diligently as a customer service representative, slowly but steadily chipping away at the $73,000 of debt he had accrued. The $500 monthly stipend from the trust, a modest safety net, was contingent on his continued responsible behavior, and he had so far repaid a significant $12,000 of his original debt. "I earned this situation, Mom," he had told her during their last call, his voice devoid of its former entitlement, "and I have to work my way out of it. There are no shortcuts." His humility was genuine, a painful but necessary step on his long road to redemption. Clara, while acknowledging his progress, had also reminded him, gently, that trust, once shattered, took years, sometimes a lifetime, to rebuild. The healing was ongoing, a quiet process for them both. Clara, in turn, had found a new purpose. She volunteered 3 days a week at the Elder Financial Protection Center, a place she had once imagined needing herself. Armed with her own painful experience, she now offered guidance and support to others facing similar exploitation, often at the hands of those they loved most. She shared stories from her support group: Helen, whose daughter had emptied her bank accounts; Arthur, whose nephew coerced him into signing over his property; Olivia, whose son had pressured her into risky investments. Each story echoed her own, highlighting the profound emotional toll of betrayal by loved ones. She found solace and strength in their shared vulnerability, a camaraderie born from surviving unimaginable pain. Her social life, once constricted by her solitary focus on Ethan, had blossomed. She had reconnected with old friends, laughing over forgotten jokes at her book club meetings and relishing the strategic challenge of weekly bridge games. Her sister, Brenda, now visited monthly, their easy laughter and shared stories filling Clara's apartment with warmth and companionship. "I feel more like myself than I have in years," Clara confessed to Brenda one evening, a genuine smile lighting her face. On a whim, Clara booked a solo cruise to Alaska, a lifelong dream she had always deferred. Amidst the breathtaking glaciers and pristine wilderness, she met Edward, a charming, witty retired history teacher. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with shared interests and a comfortable ease. Clara, cautiously, almost tentatively, found herself embracing the possibility of new romance, a testament to her openness to life's unexpected gifts. Edward saw her, truly saw her, not as a victim of her past, but as a vibrant woman with a rich history and a bright future. Mr. Sterling, her financial advisor, was delighted with her newfound joie de vivre. "Clara," he had said, reviewing her secure, diversified portfolio, "your finances are robust. You worked hard for this. It's time to enjoy your resources, to travel, to give back, to live fully." His encouragement was a gentle nudge, a permission slip to revel in the security she had so bravely fought for. And give back, she did. Beyond her volunteering, Clara found deep satisfaction in charitable giving. She continued to support the Elder Financial Protection Center, ensuring others had the resources she had discovered. She also established a small scholarship fund for single mothers, a quiet homage to her own struggles and a hopeful investment in the futures of women like her younger self. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, Clara would reflect on the what-ifs. What if George hadn't intervened? What if she hadn't found the evidence? The questions were fleeting, quickly replaced by a profound gratitude for her own resilience and the lessons learned. "Love doesn't require martyrdom," she often mused, a quiet wisdom shining in her eyes. "And family loyalty shouldn't mean accepting abuse." Sometimes, the hardest boundaries are the most loving ones. One afternoon, her phone rang. It was Ethan, his voice brimming with an excitement she hadn't heard in years. "Mom, you won't believe it. I got a promotion. And a raise. It's not regional manager. Not yet. But it's a real step up. I'm actually good at this." He sounded genuinely proud. A pride earned through hard work, not deception. Then, his voice softened, becoming earnest. "I wanted to call you and say, thank you. For not giving up on me completely. For making me face the consequences. For making me hit rock bottom. I understand now that it was exactly what I needed. You saved me, Mom, in a way I didn't know I needed saving." He paused, a catch in his voice. "I hope someday I can be half as strong as you are." Clara, now 65, stood by her harbor view window, watching the ships sail in and out, carrying their cargoes to new horizons. The words resonated deep within her. She was strong, stronger than she had ever imagined. She had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged, not broken, but transformed. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her future. With wisdom earned from pain and a newfound freedom, Clara embraced the unfolding adventures of her new chapter, a testament to the indomitable spirit of a woman who refused to be out of the picture.